Welcome back, everybody, to the Color Podcast. We deliver campus news and provide entertainment for the Honolulu Community College. I'm your host, Chris. With me today is Bryson and Alan. Joining us for today is one of the most hardworking instructors that we know, Mr. Guy Foe. How are you, Mr. Foe?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Perfect.
Well, my Google Meet just timed out, so it's a great start.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's life online, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
trials and tribulations. I'm
So,
Daily, daily.
yeah. How many cups of coffee did you already have, Mr. Foe?
I was bad this morning. So just the fact that you saw me get a refill was, yeah. So this will be 4 shots of espresso at this point.
oh my.
Oh,
It was a very long day yesterday. Yeah,
you
very
prefer espresso or like black coffee? Which one?
no. So this is a. Did you guys Didn't you guys did I sent you guys my coffee video like 1 year ago when I first started doing online and I was
Oh yeah.
practicing using my editing software? You guys remember that video I made?
Oh,
That
I
was
think
like
so.
my that was like my practice video and editing because had to kind of learn how to do all that. But no, yeah, so it's a automatic espresso machine. I don't know. Did I even mute you guys? Could you guys hear it going? It grinds up the beans and then
Oh
it
wow.
brews it. So I run it through 2 cycles. So it basically creates 2 shots of espresso. So this is a double shot. So I don't know if you guys know, but we just know things like American coffee is technically considered long coffee.
Hmm.
So American coffee is a shot of espresso and hot water. That's what makes a regular cup of coffee.
Right.
So it's like I'm having 4 cups of coffee.
Every 2 hours.
No, 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 no. I just have one of these, which is already
Okay.
bad enough. 2 cups of coffee, but today I needed a little extra.
So, Mr. Fo, what before you became an instructor, you were a carpenter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what
So,
what got you into that?
what got me into carpentry? Oh my goodness, it's all a blur. It's all a blur. I actually right after high school, I well even during high school. So my first job was a bag boy at Star Market, which doesn't even exist anymore, right? There's no more Star Markets. Um, I started as a bag boy, and then I started working at Town and Country Surf Shop. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Town and Country Surf Shop, but I started working there when it was really like a surf shop, when it was old school. They didn't have the big fancy stores that they had now. Um, and then from there, being working in retail, sort of, I was there during the transition when they went from small time surf shop into what you kind of see now in the stores. And then I don't know if any of you are familiar, but I kind of grew up in town, um, in the Kaimiki area, Pololo. I went to Kalani High School. So anyway, Kahala Mall was like my stomping ground. So there used to be a store there called the Body Shop, and it was part of a chain of stores that was owned by a local family. And they used to be closely tied in with Zoom Surf Shop that used to be in Pro Ridge, so on and so forth. But anyway, I moved into retail and I became assistant manager at that men's clothing store in Kahala Mall for several years. And being that I was working right in Kahala Mall, I'd see a lot of my classmates, they'd come into the store and they're like, "Hey, guy, how are you doing?" One of my classmates' father owned a painting company. And he came in one day and we were talking, and I was like, I wasn't really happy with my job working in retail. I was exploited. I was the youngest assistant manager in the company. I was, just out of high school, because I was working there even during my last years. So I was, 18, 19, maybe 19 years old. I was assistant manager and working basically 40 plus hours a week. I would open and close the store sometimes, so I'd work from 9 to 9. But, and I was getting paid $5.25 an hour.
Ooh.
That was just a little above minimum. So even as an assistant manager, I was just getting paid barely above minimum wage. So, and then I asked for raises from time to time and I never got it. And then my friend came in and, he was like, "You want to go work for my dad?" And I was like, he was like, "Let me go talk to my dad and see if he can get you in," because they were a union shop. He was like, let me see if he can give you a job and maybe you can get into the painter's apprenticeship program. So I was like, absolutely, go ask your dad. So he came in a couple of days later and he was like, "Yeah, my dad said he'd give you a job." So that day I put in my 2 weeks. Manager came in and said, "I'm out of here." And then he's like, "I'll get you a raise." I was like, too late. So that's what started my somewhat career in the construction industry. I didn't know anything prior to that. So I quit my job there. I worked for my friend's dad, was called Kikuta Painting. They're still around. They're a local company. And I was placed into the painters union. So I actually started going to, kind of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with how apprenticeship works. And our campus, right, does all of the apprenticeship training, right? Not all, but a lot of the apprenticeship training. So I did. I worked full time as a painter. And on Saturdays, I would go to apprenticeship courses at HCC on campus many, many years ago. And I did that for just under 2 years. Because nothing against painters, but for me, it's always been, I like to keep learning about things and it's got to be, but painting is like, for me anyway, it was like, up, down, side to side, after
It's
doing
hard
that
to
for a
mix the
year and a half,
balance.
2 years, I just got bored.
It's like watching paint
And
dry.
yeah, and I just, yeah, literally. No, but I was an apprentice. So I was, back then, apprentices, we always get the, we would always get the bum jobs, so, I'd be the one who would get the, "Here, guy, give me a barrel of, I'm going to say, it's called Epil Prime, but it's basically epoxy primer." So you guys, I'm sure you guys know what that means, right? So they'd be like, "Here, guy, send me down into the basement where all the pipes are and everything is running and all the infrastructure, all the MEP systems down there." And I'm in there, painting away, right? And the paint's just going all over me and everything. And at the end of the day, I come out and I'd be like, "So how do I get this off?" It's like, and they look at me and they go, "Time." That's all that's good. So it was kind of like, yeah, just let guy go, basically it's epoxy, right? So literally I had the green scrubber and I was like scrubbing it off my skin until it came off. But after a couple of years, I just really got bored with it. During that time, I'd say maybe the last half a year, while I was a painter, I started working at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in a Japanese restaurant there. I was working 2 full-time jobs. I was already living on my own. That's why by the time I graduated high school, I was out living on my own. And so I had 2 full-time jobs. I had asked my boss at Kikuta if I could start work early, right? Typical construction work day is from 7 to 3:30. So I asked if I could start work at 6:30 so that I could end at 3, because I started at the hotel at 4 and I worked from 4 to 10 or 11. Yeah. So that was my days, basically. Monday through Saturday, excuse me, that was like I worked double. 2 sides. And I did that. I do not know how I did that. You young guys, I'm sure maybe you got all that kind of energy, but there's no way I could ever even contemplate doing that ever again. So I did that. And that kind of created a little buffer for me, because when I got sick of painting, I was like, I had it. So I quit painting, and then I still had my nighttime full job, and everything kind of rolled. Like how they always say, everything happens for a reason. So I was just working at the hotel, and then Iniki hit. So was it 1990, 91 when Hurricane Iniki hit? So Hurricane Iniki hit. I was actually at the hotel working that when the hurricane hit, and we were helping the guests and all of that stuff. And then right after Iniki hit, at that time I had a cousin of mine who was working for a general contractor. And they were a small general contracting company. There were only, at the time, I think there were about 5 of them, right, working. And the boss was born and raised on Kauai. So needless to say, right? So he had a lot of family and friends that were affected after the hurricane. And basically all of the family that he still has family there and whatnot. They asked, hey, you know what, can you guys come over and help? So he told my cousin, hey, you know anybody who wants to come work? Because we're going to have a lot of jobs. And then he called me and he said, hey, guy, you want to work? I was like, yeah, okay, sounds good. I was still young. I was single. So he was like, well, we're going to have to go. We're going to go right now. The first leg, we're probably going to be up there 6 months, living on Kauai. So I asked if I could take a leave at the hotel. And if some of you are familiar with the hotel, we typically have what's called, especially for Japanese restaurants, right, where we have a lot of Japanese tourists, but we had a period which was called Golden Week, and nobody could take vacation or leave because it was the busiest time of the year. So they wouldn't give me leave. So I was like, okay, I quit. So I quit. And then I started working. I didn't know anything, nothing at all. But it was perfect because it was like a little family company. 5 guys, my cousin worked there. The lead carpenter who was there was, the 2 lead guys actually came from the union. They used to work at Hawaiian Dredging. They went through the entire journey. They were all journeyman carpenters. And the lead carpenter was my cousin's. So my cousin who worked there, his sister, my other cousin, that was her ex-husband. So I knew him also. So he kind of took me under his wing, and basically I learned everything about building. I learned in that company. So as much as I understand, the unions are really important, but this company was a non-union company, and the reason why I stuck it out, because I had a lot of opportunities to go into the union, and at some point like, okay, why don't I go apprenticeship and go learn? But I was learning a lot in that small company. We did mostly residential, some light commercial. So I don't have a lot of experience in large scale high rises and things of that nature, but I never really had the desire to do that, because that was kind of why I left painting. If you work in a large company, and let's say you're a form carpenter, right, and you're working on a 30-story high rise, that's all you're going to do. You're just going to do form carpentry. Even if you're a finisher, let's say you're laying cabinets, you're going to be laying cabinets for a year, 30 floors, whatever. You're going to do the same thing every day. By working for a small company like I did, it was always different, right? We went from one job to the next job. Because we were a small company, I got exposure to do everything. He was a general contractor. So as a GC, other than electrical and plumbing, we could actually do it all. If the job was small enough, we would do everything. So I learned from shoveling and wheelbarrowing, from not even knowing how to swing a hammer. I learned everything from scratch on the job. And it was because of the environment that I was in, which was a very good teaching environment. They were all mentors, and it was, and maybe it's that because I experienced that type of environment in my trade, which is maybe why I like teaching so much. So that's how it started. So from 1990, 91, and I went up, and it was like the best apprenticeship training I could ever hope for, because we went to Kauai and everything was shut down. So it's not like we could go and say, hey, call our roofer and say, hey, can you guys come and do the roof? Or call up our tapers or the plasterers and tell them, hey, come and tape. We had to do everything. So it was like crash course for me. So that two stints. We did one stint 6 months, came back, and then the homeowners that we did some work for, they called us back because they said, "Oh, you guys did such good work. Can you just come back and we want to do this and fix this?" And we went up for another 6 months. So I was up there for almost a year, and it was great. I mean, I learned how to tape. I learned how to do concrete. I learned how to do roofing. I learned how to do some electrical and plumbing because my boss, it's pretty hilarious, but his name is David, and the other two subcontractors, the plumber and the electrician, they were also named David, and they all knew each other from when they were young. So we call them the three Davids. So, and because they were small companies too, so the plumber David the plumber, I would call him, he only had one other worker full time, and then the rest of them was his sons. His two sons would come on the weekend and help him, and then his brother was a union plumber, so the brother would come and help him sometimes. And then same thing with the electrician. So when they would come to the job, and if the son or the brother wasn't there, then it would always be, "Hey guy, go help David." So I got to learn a lot of things in regards to electrical and plumbing and things of that nature. So that's what drove it, and it was my passion, and it was just different every single time. So I got to work on a lot of different jobs. Learned a lot of different things, and quite honestly, I don't think I would have had that type of experience or had that type of exposure if I went into the union, unless I went to work for a small general contractor that was a union contractor, which was hard to find back then. A lot of the small general contractors couldn't afford to be in the union, and it just worked out that way. And I did that until 2004. Or 5, until the change. You guys know the change, right? Yeah, it was the thing that a lot of people think was and at the time I thought was a negative thing, but I think that was the thing that, again, everything happens for a reason. But industrial accident, you hear about it all the time. So you guys know what happened, right? So why I draw the best turkeys on Thanksgiving. And if you guys want to know what that is, then you should become an AEC student. And in the fall, you'll see what my Mr. Foles turkey looks like, right? But anyway, I had an industrial accident which basically prevented me from returning to work. And that started my journey. I mean, literally, that was like the path. It was almost like I look back and, they say hindsight. I was like, everything just happens for a reason. And now I think of it, everybody's like, "Oh my God, really?" And I was like, to me, this was a small price to pay. Yeah. Because of this injury that took me out of the industry, sent me to vocational rehab training, which sent me right to where I am now, right where you guys are. I was a student in the AEC program because it's a program that fits very well with, industry workers who need retraining, right? So something that's familiar, right, along those lines. And I went into the program. I did exactly what you guys are doing. A little bit different. The curriculum has changed a little here and there, but not much different at all. And it was because building was already my passion, and because of how the program has always taught. Right? We're not an architectural design program, right? We teach some concepts in regards to design, and now we have construction management. But our focus has always been to try to teach students to understand what they're drawing, right? So you guys know how things get put together, right? So for me, that's right up my alley, right? I mean, I'm a builder. You guys already know. You've heard me talk your guys' ears off about framing, right? You guys know how I, when I start talking about building, I kind of go off on a tangent, right? But I think that's what makes it special, right? So I went through the program, and while I was in my 4th semester, just like you guys, our former faculty member, Mr. Doug Madden, who was one of the originals, right? He was doing some training with DOE teachers. And it was because they started this program, and some of you may be familiar with it, but was called the Construction Academy. The Construction Academy was developed to try to get high school students interested in the trades, right? So it didn't really start specifically for AEC. It was mainly legislation funded this program to try to get students interested in being carpenters and whatnot, because they were having a hard time finding people to get into the carpenters union and things of that nature. So basically they were looking for industry professionals, like carpenters, builders, and then what was tied into that, what was going on in high school, was mechanical drafting, right? So hand drafting was being taught in the high schools for years. You know, I took mechanical drafting when I was in high school, but there was this transition towards, you know, the technology, right? What you guys learned, right? AutoCAD, and it wasn't even thinking about teaching Revit in the high schools yet. But they were looking for instructors to work alongside the DOE teachers to try to deliver the content, right? So it was more or less, a lot of DOE teachers knew how to teach, right? They were the professional teachers, and then supposedly we were the, you know, the content experts, right? We were the experts at building, right? The construction side. So that partnership was, you know, supposed to kind of develop and then teach students at the high school level, offer them dual credit at the high school, at the college for carpentry and, you know, whatever programs. But that was the focus at first for carpentry. So Mr. Madden was doing training for all of the construction academy instructors, which were HonCC instructors, right? Honolulu Community College instructors, and their counterpart Department of Education high school teachers were coming in, and they were learning how to do AutoCAD. So again, I was still, you know, I was married at the time, and but I didn't have any children, so I had a lot of free time. So I'd sit in the lab like till 9 o'clock at night. They weren't as strict as they were back then, you know. So I would be in the lab from 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock that night, because, you know, I would just work. I would just stay there. So Mr. Madden was doing training for the DOE teachers in the evenings. And then I decided, because there was still a 40-hour, that existed even back then, the 40-hour community service. So I stayed and I tutored. I helped him teach the class in for the DOE teachers. And I would go in there and I would help the high school teachers and the Honolulu Community College instructors learn how to use AutoCAD. And I was getting community service hours for it. But little did I know that that was going to steer me to where I'm sitting right now. So I got to know a lot of the instructors there, and then basically the word got out. It was like, hey, you know, there's this guy at AEC, no pun intended, this guy. There's this guy at AEC, right? And yeah, he has building experience, but he's going to end up with a degree in AEC too. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, right? It's like I could also help with carpentry courses at the high school, but I could also help develop the CAD courses that they were trying to transition to in the high school. So they offered me a job in my 4th semester. So the college actually offered me a job, and they were like, well, they didn't offer, they were like, hey, can you come work? And I was like, well, I can't. Because of vocational rehab, you have to finish that process. So I had to get my degree. I had to kind of go out and look for a job and go through all of those steps to complete that vocational rehab process, because it was part of workers' comp. I was actually getting paid to go to school, you know, so with disability and things of that nature. But more or less, they just said, you know, we're going to hold the position for you. And not really hold the position for you, but it's like when the time came, the position was still open. I interviewed for it, and I went straight from AEC that year. I graduated with 2007, and in May, and then I started working for the college that August. Started as a construction academy instructor working at Waipahu High School.
Yeah.
Where it started. I helped them change over their mechanical drafting program. We bought computers, we tried to turn it into a CAD lab. And then that's what I did. I started floating around construction academy. I actually ended up becoming what was called a traveling instructor. So instead of just being at one school, I would travel and I would teach. And that was quite the challenge, but it was great. because it gave me exposure to all the different schools. I got to meet a lot of different DOE teachers. I worked with multiple. So instead of just sitting in one place, which I don't like to do, I ended up going around. So my daily rounds at that point became, so I'm in Mililani. So my day would start at Waipahu High School. I'd go to Waipahu High School in the morning, check in with the instructor that was there. If they needed anything, then I would go to Lelehua. From Lelehua, I'd go to Wailua to Kahuku. And then from Kahuku, I would just go stay on that side of the island, and I would come back to Honolulu Community College. So that was my round. I would drive around the island, almost around the island every day. That was my routine for a while. So I've worked at, I was able to work at Waipahu. I've been at Mililani. I've taught at Mililani High School. I've taught at McKinley, Kaimaki for a short stint. I used to substitute here and there when the instructors weren't able to. I'd go out to Kahuku and teach. Where else? I think that's about it.
I mean,
But,
if anything, you're well traveled.
Yeah, but I already was.
Right, exactly.
It worked out. I've worked, when I was a carpenter, when I was working for a general, we worked all over the island. So that's why I was like, well, guy, where I have to go anywhere. I was like, well, we live on a rock. But, yes, I know everything because I've basically done jobs all over the island, So everywhere is pretty much familiar to me, kind of, at some point. But that's what happened. And then I was a instructor for Construction Academy for a while. And you guys also know that's where we both started now, both Mr. Takea and I. Actually, Mr. Takea was the one that I became friends with in that class, because his friend, so Mr. Takea used to be, right? Because Mr. Takea's background is construction management, right? That's why we have construction management. But he used to work for painting contractors, right? So he knew a lot of the people that I knew, but there was another fellow classmate in AEC that was also a painter like me. He used to hang wallpaper, but they're part of the same union. And he worked for Mr. Takea. So Mark and I, so his name was Mark, he was around my age, but we were always in the lab till late because he didn't have kids either. So when we were in there, he was like, hey, you got to meet this guy. I know him next door, Norman. And that's how that introduction happened. So it's such a small world, right? And everything kind of just happened for a reason. But that's why I met Norman. He introduced me to the two instructors that were in charge of the construction academy, and then that's how everything happened. And then while Mr. Takea was also another traveling instructor, so his route was very, different schools, but we both would end up at the office on campus every day, the two of us. So, and that's how our relationship started. And then we started talking about, what, we need to, let's look at, and then that's how it happened. We started ending up taking on a lot of opportunities at the college. So I would, when I wasn't teaching in the high schools, we would do a lot of things on campus. And then he was like, you know what, we need to start a construction management program because there was none. It doesn't exist, right? I mean, that's why we're the only game in town. And then we started working on it. We started doing our research because we were learning how to do curriculum while we were working at Construction Academy. And then that's how it happened. We created some experimental courses. We talked to the dean and they were like, well, it usually takes about 7 years to create a new degree program. We did it in 2.5.
Yes.
So we created the construction management program, and that's how we slowly kind of transitioned over. And it was just a lot of just little things that, things just fell into place. And Mr. Jennings took sabbatical 1 year and they couldn't find an instructor. So they asked me to teach. So that was like my first, before I was still a construction academy instructor, but they gave me what they call a reassignment of duties. So for the spring semester, this semester, the 4th semester, they pulled me out of Construction Academy, and then I was temporarily assigned to AEC. And I was teaching, basically I was Mr. Jennings. What you guys are learning this semester, I was teaching all his courses in the 4th semester with Mr. Madden, who was teaching 1st semester. And that was like my first kind of introducing to AEC. And then I went back. We developed a construction management program. We offered it on a provisional status, and then we ended up merging it into AEC. And that's what it ended up becoming full circle. And I ended up coming right back to AEC, where I belong. And I've been working for the college now for this August will be 14 years. So even though it's kind of weird for me, because even though building is always, I always say building is my passion, and I always say that I'm a carpenter. Now I can't really say that because I've been an educator longer than I've been a builder. So really, I'm an educator now.
Right.
And I love teaching. You guys know, we have the best students. We have the best students at HonCC just in general. I love working at Honolulu Community College. But you know, AEC, we have a really good thing going there. I love my job. I enjoy teaching my students.
You can tell in your lectures.
You can tell in my lectures because it's just like this podcast. It's all me talking. It's me talking, right? And your guys' ears are bleeding, right? By the time I'm done.
Oh, it's gold. It's crazy. You're basically going through all of our talking points, like one by one. We're like, oh, should we talk about this? Oh, he already talked about it. It was perfect.
Because you guys are AEC students.
Yes,
Connected.
exactly.
You know, the Construction Academy was the reason why all three of us are here now.
Is it
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. But
So,
it's sad. You guys know that program is gone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's so sad.
our teacher, I think you know him. His name is David J.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so he taught at Waipahu, carpentry.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Chris are his students. And then he started talking about HGC, and then we slowly learned more about all the programs, and then we ended up here.
It was a great thing. I mean, that's the thing that it was meant to do. But you know, it's bittersweet that the program is not there. But I think it just needed to morph, right? Just like everything else, it can't just stay the way it was originally. Because as I said, that program was created to try to get students interested in getting into carpentry, right? And then it tried to morph into other areas, trying to get students industry as a whole. But then that becomes kind of overlaps into general gear up and outreach type of programs. So, you know, even though it's gone, it's not really gone. You know, we still try to incorporate those same concepts, but, you know, into existing programs. The sad part is just, you know, all the instructors.
Right.
Majority of the instructors are no longer with the college. I mean, I shouldn't say no longer. It's just they kind of lost that position, so they have to reapply for a position. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. But it was great. It was the start for you guys, but that was the start for me. You know, Construction Academy program is what got me to where I am today, and I think it helped me. It definitely helped me to be the instructor that I am now. And it's mainly because I had that exposure at the secondary level, and then seeing, you know, how the difference is, and being able to, because that's how our program is, right? You guys know this, right? I mean, our program and a lot of programs at Honolulu Community College is very diverse, right? The age range can be anywhere from 17 to 65, right? And I've had that range in just one class, you know. So, you know, being able to try to address the different needs in such a broad, you know, diverse range, you know, it's quite challenging. But you know what? I like the challenge. Keeps it exciting, because I don't like to get bored. Because if it gets bored, I'm out of here. That's what I've always told myself. I always told myself, if I wake up in the morning and I gotta oh man, I gotta work, then it's time to change. Because life is too short to do things that you don't enjoy, right? You guys heard me say this, right? And Takea always said, we always say it, right? When you guys are in our program, you have to be passionate about the industry that you're going into. If you guys are just doing this because you want to learn a skill set to get a paycheck, you're not gonna last. Not in this industry. You have to have the passion. Okay. And you heard the saying, right? If you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life, right? Because it's not going to feel like work. So that's my advice. Anyway, it's good. I didn't know all three of you came from construction. We're in Construction Academy. That's awesome.
Yeah, so Alan and I was part of building construction. We did that pretty much all of high school, and then Bryson and I was part of the Academy of Engineering. So we learned how to do Revit and all that stuff from that. And
Yeah.
he was part of the architecture.
Yeah, I was in the drafting class.
Yeah.
With
So he
Mr.
learned.
Taliwaga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So he taught us how to do AutoCAD. So and then after that we all just kind of got into the program.
Nice.
It was awesome.
What you learning from me for then? You don't need learning. I know what you're learning from me. You're learning how to be patient and sit and listen to somebody talk on and on and on.
All skills are necessary.
Hey, be a lifetime learner. That's what I always tell you guys too, right? Just make sure that you have an open mind, and just as long as you tell yourself that you don't know everything, you'll be good to go. So I do. I learn stuff from my students on a regular basis. That's my goal. Usually by the end of the fourth semester, me and Mr. Jennings usually get jealous. Like, wow, you know a little bit more about Revit than me, some of you anyway. It's because you guys have more time than we do to like spend with the family editor, and but just the whole environment. And it's not just AEC program, right? A lot of the trade programs or the 2-year programs at our college is the same way, right? It just becomes this cohort, right? And by the time you get to the end of the fourth semester, it's like family, right? And that's why it was great. Me and Mr. Jennings clicked like that. He was my teacher, and so I went from being his student, he was my instructor, and he became, he's like one of my best friends now. We've been teaching alongside, one another for years. But that was because that's the kind of environment that AEC we have, right? And I still, till this day, I keep in contact with a lot of students who went through the program. A lot of us do. Kind of help, right? When you know more choice and you're looking at, our 3 ugly mugs for 4 semesters. For some of you who are on the, the 5-6 year plan, then it's even longer. So,
on the topic of teaching at HCC, how did you deal with moving your class to an online format? Because we know the difficulties. What did you find difficult? Because as you said, you like to be moving, you like to be proactive with learning and interacting. So how does it feel to be sitting down at home in front of a screen?
It is difficult on several levels. But, I always try to focus on the positive, right? Mr. Fo is always like, very rarely you see me grumpy, right? I try not to let you see me grumpy. And I'm usually not, because once I'm in front of you, that's my, I enjoy it. Yes, you guys put me in that good mood. But it was very difficult. For years, we have been actually talking about how we could move our classes online. And we always kind of like was, no, it would be too hard because, like for AutoCAD, you guys know, right? It's like everything is so, because it's technical and everything is so process oriented, AutoCAD is very step by step, right? If you don't do this, you got to hit this key. And if you hit the wrong key, then something happens, right? And a lot of times, if I don't see you do it, I don't know what's wrong, right? So you guys kind of know this because you guys were like the last group to be in the lab, right? Before everything went online. And that would be it. It would be like, Mr. Fo, I'm having a problem with something. I was like, okay, wait. And then I'd come over and I'd be like, okay, do it again. And then I'd watch, right? And then when I watch, I say, okay, now I see what's wrong, right? So along those lines, it was very difficult to try to troubleshoot those things remotely, right? Because now I can't do that, right? I tried, right? So, what I did was, if students had trouble, I'd be like, okay, you know what? Jump into a Google Meet or Zoom and then let's see what's going on, right? tell me what you're doing, right? I can't see the keyboard, but if you presented your screen to me, it's almost the same, right? I can kind of guess, what's happening, because a lot of times those mistakes are not unique, right? It's things that students have done over and over again over the years, right? So that was a very difficult thing. Because we were forced to go online, this kind of took away that, I don't think it's going to work out. So we never did pull the trigger. We never did like, okay, let's try to offer a course online. We just said, maybe someday. This forced us to kind of do that. And again, it at the time you think of it as this negative thing, but really in hindsight, again, it was another positive, because it forced us to understand that, what, we can do this, right? We're still on a regular basis dealing with issues, and I'm learning constantly, but it's okay. I accept that. I'm a lifelong learner, as I said. But this actually broadens the capabilities of the program now, right? So, and because, what we offer is a little unique, right? There's another AEC program on the Big Island, right? So Hawai'i CC has an AEC program. So there's only 2 AEC programs, degree programs in the state, right? I mean, aside of architecture, but in regards to what we offer. But what Hawai'i CC offers is very different from what we offer. Some courses are the same, but basically the pathway and the courses that you guys learn and the degree that you get is very different from Hawai'i CC. So a lot of students from neighbor islands, right? So if you're on Hawai'i CC, okay, you have a program. But if you're on Maui, if you're on Kauai, right? If you're on any of the other islands, you don't have that opportunity. So, with us now understanding that we can, right? There are definitely some hurdles and regular speed bumps that we're going to face. We know that we can offer it, and that just broadens, it gives a lot more, gives the students throughout the state the opportunity to take our courses now. So that is probably what we're going to try to do, but it's very difficult, the transition. What made it a lot simpler, and a lot of programs, right, they have the same struggles, but because we were a technical program, because the instructors were working on a regular basis with online content, right? Mr. Takeo was already teaching, 118 with Laulima for years already. I had a little experience. Most of us were using Laulima, even though our courses were face-to-face to some extent. You guys know that with me, right? I would offer my quizzes and, I'd make you guys submit assignments in Laulima. So the transition wasn't that difficult in that sense. What made it difficult was trying to get what I would normally lecture to the students. Okay, how am I going to deliver that? And then that required me to now, okay, are we going to do live, right? And that was the trouble, right? I mean, that's why I in the beginning, I had to, right? Like what you guys do at Mr. Jennings and some instructors still do. It's like, okay, everybody's got to jump into a Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever. And then basically, this is our live lecture, right? As if we're sitting in the classroom. But there's always some challenges with that, right? Just the beginning of this podcast, right? Bryson got kicked out, right? Lost connection, had to jump back in, right? So at any point that happens, then it's like you missed a part of the lecture, right? So it kind of defeats the whole purpose. If you're not getting all of that content, and you miss here and there, then how, how effective is that lecture going to be, right? So now it becomes, okay, well, now we got to record. Well, then there's all kind of troubles with that. You already know the kind of troubles that I've been having with those. So I said it was a long night last night. So again, that's the transition. It's not something that I'm accustomed to, right? I don't do it on I haven't been doing it, even though this will be a year now, right? This spring break will actually make the year, right? When we come back from spring break, that's what happened last year, right? That was the start of our journey online. When we came back from spring break, they said, nope, campus closed, everybody going online, right? So this will make a year. And even after a year, I'm still, I still don't have that muscle memory because it's not something that I did for a long period of time. So yesterday, I did a lecture, and then in the afternoon, I was doing a little add-on video lecture. So using my screen capture software, and I was recording a little with no audio because I wanted it to be quick, right? Because it's just faster. I just wanted to demonstrate how to do certain things in Revit for one of my courses. So I just did that. I opened it up. I turned off the mic. Then I just went through it. It was about like a maybe 10, 15-minute demonstration. Just did it. Didn't need any audio. You guys seen some YouTube videos like that, right? Where it's not narrated. So I saved it. And then I had a introductory Revit class last night. 3-hour long lecture. I went through the whole deal. I had my screen capture software up there. Guess what happened? I forgot to turn the mic back on from when I did it in the afternoon. So I recorded a 3-hour lecture last night with no audio. I was like, after I opened it up and I was about to just do some minor editing and then push it out into the classroom, I opened it up and I looked at it and I was like, no audio. And oh my God, it felt like somebody just punched me in the gut, because it was a good lecture, 3 hours, right? And no audio. All you see is my lips moving like, that's it.
God. Yeah.
So
Sometimes
I have to actually decide to either narrate it over now, but that's not going to work. Because number one, I'm going to have to either edit my face out of there because there's no way it's going to match, right? Or I just need to redo it all over again. And it's never going to be the same. So that's the second challenge that I'll say is, for me, you guys have sat through many of my lectures. And typically, my lectures, I have this flow when I lecture. And a lot of times, and you guys even witnessed it, is you hear me say, it's like, hey, even the other day, I'll tell Chris, like, hey, I paid you, to say that, ask me that question because it segues perfectly into what was happening next. But it's because that typically the way that I lecture over the years usually triggers questions that typically trigger what's happening next in the topic, right? So usually, I have this flow when I lecture, and it's because of the interaction with the students. Okay. You guys also know that sometimes I'll be drunk driving and then you guys purposely ask me those questions that take me off on the tangent, right? And then the lecture kind of goes like this, right? But ultimately it's still, right, kind of going like this. So if I do pre-recorded lectures, right? So basically just me talking to the camera, then the lecture ends up being more linear, right? I kind of know what I'm going to talk about. Then it's really just point A to point B, okay? And it just doesn't quite have that flow because there's no questions that are coming from students that kind of, steers the conversation this way or that. And then, but when I think of it as like, I already know what I need to lecture and I just do it, but that's all I'm thinking about, right? So it's just real linear. It's just A to B. And then when I get to B, sometimes I'll be like, oh, you know what? I forgot to talk about this one thing. But usually I end up talking about that because it gets triggered by a question. So that's the only downside to it, because I was asked the question before. It's like, isn't it easier to just pre-record lectures, Mr. Fo? And I was like, yes and no. And I can see it. When I watch the recordings, I can see a definite difference in a recorded lecture where it's just me talking to the camera, going over content for, asynchronous delivery, as opposed to lecturing. And which is why I kind of started going back to that model. And it doesn't matter if and I've had the other day, there's only one student showed up. But it makes all the difference in the world, if that one student just even asks question, because it just makes the interaction or the delivery of the lecture a little bit more, it'll make it feel like it's more personable. I've even tried to I'll literally have a screen capture of the students and I kind of have it on the screen and then I'll act like I'm actually talking to a live class. But I've tried all kind of things, but that's the kind of hurdles that for us at AEC we've been facing. And I think it's getting better, but no matter what, we still have the same hurdles. Technology is it's just a tool, right? And we need that tool to properly deliver the content remotely, right? And if, like any other tool, if there's glitches with it, then there's going to be glitches in the delivery. And I think that's something that we'll never get away from. And it's always going to be a problem and something we just need to embrace and understand and figure out how to deal with it. But it's the same problems that the students are having, right? I mean, I think, some students have transitioned well. We have many students that have not transitioned well at all and have actually chosen to take a step back because they can't deal with the transition. Because for you, I understand the trials for students is because you're no longer in a controlled environment, right? So you might be sitting in an environment with a whole lot of distractions that you didn't have when you were sitting in the lab. So it's very different, and I think there's trials and tribulations from all perspectives, and that's something that I'm trying to make sure that I do too. I try to make sure that I can view things from your perspective and not just from my perspective. So,
Do you see AEC being online pretty much forever, or do you think that AEC would expand at some point to have both on campus and have a dedicated online professors at the same time?
I actually think that is going to be the end goal. We need to have our program be offered remotely. Right now, because of the pandemic, and there are talks about possibly our program being the one program to deliver and coordinate for the entire state. And if that happens, as I just said, whether or not there's one program at Hawai'i CC, is we need to have every course be available remotely. I mean, that's just the nature of it, right? If we want to be able to service the entire state, which means neighbor islands, then our courses have to be, doesn't have to be, but for now, we have to offer it online. And then potentially courses, if we end up, right, ultimately that should be the goal, is we can have, if we're offering an AEC 110 AutoCAD or Revit course, right, if we're offering a Revit course, we have one section that's online and then one section that's face-to-face, right? And then we can do that, right? If we have the sections that are online, then they can just be managed from here, right? Because, right, if I'm offering the online sections, anybody can take it, right? No matter where, anywhere around the world. We're just talking about the state, but that doesn't mean international students or students from everywhere, right, could take it, right? And then if we have face-to-face courses, then maybe we'll have faculty from Maui. Okay, we're gonna offer a Revit course on Maui. But the thing is, it's like, if you're gonna offer it from the neighbor islands, we have to decide, okay, what courses are necessary to be face-to-face, right? Because we can't just say, well, we're just going to offer a face-to-face course because to give that option. Well, how do you say that about one and not all, right? So if that becomes the case, then essentially we would need to have a duplication of exactly what we have here at every campus, right? I mean, otherwise, if you're a Maui student, for example, and we offer one course or two courses that are face-to-face, then they only have the option of taking those two courses face-to-face. All the rest of them, they're still gonna have to take online, right? So it's always gonna be, I think for now, it's gonna be this mixture, and students will have to accept the fact that some courses they're gonna have to learn how to take remotely. And quite honestly, that's probably going to even happen with the general education courses. Yeah, so if you take English, it's most likely going to be online. I mean, that's what they're saying. I don't really know if that's the case, but I think this pandemic has started the wheels in motion for a new normal in regards to there's going to be a lot more of online or distance education type of delivered courses. And that's really something that students are going to have to understand. It's going to be part of your educational journey, is taking courses online. For AEC right now, that's the plan. This next coming fall, is we're still going to be offering our courses online, but we may, at that point, if we can reopen, it's going to be a hybrid, truly like what we intended it to be. Bulk of the lectures and everything is going to be online, And then if students want to have some open lab time and face-to-face help, then we'd come into the lab for those hybrid type of situations, but we won't be lecturing in the lab.
Was there any thought of you guys being in the lab with students lecturing while at the same time like streaming that to an online class? Because that way you have both classes going on at the same time, and then you have all the questions can come in at that point as well.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I mean, we have programs that we're doing that, but I think what would happen is you still have the problems of technology, right? So if you lose connection, then those individuals are going to miss it. But I mean, just like what I'm doing now, we could potentially do that, right? So I could be lecturing live to some students who are in the lab, right? And then recording that lecture at the same time, and then it gets posted for students who are going to watch it later. But then that becomes, there's a lot of logistical things that come into play for that, because then it becomes like, well, why are we even, utilizing a facility when, you're basically only lecturing face-to-face to a handful of students every day, and majority of the students are just watching a pre-recording later, right? Because doing it live, as I said, there's some challenges that are tied to that, but that's a model that has been used before, and could possibly be an option for what we have in the future. But right now, we haven't really gotten to that point to decide what that's going to look like, because a lot of times they need to know what we would like to do way ahead of time. So like I was saying, they already asked us, at the beginning of the spring, okay, what is your plan for the fall? And the only thing we can do is make a decision based upon the facts we have today, right? And the fact right now is we don't know if, things are going to settle down with the pandemic come August. So if you need an answer from us right now, then yes, we're going to deliver the same way online. And then at that point, when things change, right, as we get new facts and, things settle down and we figure out what is that, new normal, then we can kind of decide how we may or may not, what those options might be, just like what you said, and a lot of times we try to get student feedback from that, find out what is the problems that students are facing, and that's one of the main things. One of the biggest things for the neighbor island, especially Hawaii Island, is Hilo. It's remote, right? Their infrastructure alone is terrible, right? So the bandwidth, they don't have the kind of bandwidth connection, so even on campus, right? So for them to have to take classes online in this manner, right, to sit in a live lecture, cannot, because they're constantly cutting out and they're missing, right? They're like not getting all the information. And if they're going to end up having to watch a recording, then why sit in the live session, right? So it becomes this blurred kind of line that, right now it's kind of like, don't know which lane to go in, right? It's kind of like you're just driving in two lanes and just crossing over. Like how they drive in China. I've experienced that firsthand.
Or the Philippines. They
Is
make
it?
like 4 lanes become
about it.
6 lanes
I
at
only-
some point.
I only can speak from my experience in China. And when I left China, I told myself that every single stoplight, stop sign, any kind of traffic signal is just a suggestion. That's all. It's just suggested.
Yeah, every time we go to Philippines and we head back to our house, there's always this 4-lane highway that everyone has to go through, and it always becomes 6-lane at some point.
Yeah.
So it's
Every single
it's
car.
crazy. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the way you drive. So I don't know if they think the line is like a rail because they straddle it. They drive right over the center line, like as if they're stuck on the line, like it's their guide. And they drive on it, and as soon as they come to a car, then they'll pick a lane, depending on which side they want to pass you. And then as soon as they pass the car, then they go back over and they straddle the 2 lanes. And it's just like, it's like, oh my God.
So, Mr. Fo, how do you make all the videos that you have for all your classes? Because you have like 6 classes, yeah, or 5 or 6 that you're teaching.
I am actually teaching 5 classes this semester, which is what has made it very difficult, right? So as we talked about, trying to get all of our content, all of my content in video format now. It's literally like me trying to, you guys know this, it's like me trying to record video tutorials, right? And so I've been using Camtasia. So Camtasia and I really like. We bought 3 licenses. All 3 of us are using it to record screen capture and a post-editing process. It took a long time to get used to it. And I'm still learning a lot from it, but I've gotten a lot better at it. And I've learned how to kind of do little tricks and things here and there. And I just kind of, in the beginning, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, right? So it's like funny, right? Ironic, right? Watching all these YouTube videos. So I can create YouTube videos too. But that's what I use. I use Camtasia. And then sometimes when that process was taking a little longer, then I would just start, doing the Google Meet, and then I'll record that. Right. And then that Google Meet recording, I'll take that and I'll plop that into Camtasia along with anything else I want. And then I can, crop things out. And if any of you are familiar with that, it's really good. I can do a lot of good things. But what I had to do was I had to scale back a little. So in the very beginning, I was going to put in all the nice annotations, make it all pretty, and then when I'm talking and then the arrow shoots in and, add in the text, that stuff. I mean, it makes a really great tutorial, but just the fact that my tutorials are typically, or my lectures are, that's why I didn't change, right? Because I already have, right? My lectures, and I've been doing it for so long, it's pretty close, right? Like an hour and a half, right? Like one class period, right? So to just take that hour and 15, hour 20, or 2 hour long lecture, and then bring it into the Camtasia and do all the post editing and crop things out, add in all the goodies. In the very beginning, to do an hour and a half lecture would take almost triple the time in post editing. It would take me like 3 hours to go through all of that. And I was realizing, I can't make, for now, I can't be spending this kind of time making all of these pretty videos. I need to get that content out to students. And that was the biggest challenge, so you can really see now the videos are I just need to cut and make sure that I pull out the stuff that, when you guys send me on tangents, I'm like, I just cut that out. Right? I mean, so you guys who sit here and experience real life. Yeah. But the recording, it went from an hour and 45-minute lecture to, an hour and 15 minutes. And then that also helped me to see, like, what, I got to focus, because that was 30 minutes of stuff that, okay, you can decide if it's useful information or not, but really wasn't necessary, right? Okay, so that also helped me to focus a little bit more on my lectures. So everything, I try to look at it from that learning perspective, but that's what I'm using. I'm using a combination of a lot of different things now. I've learned to, more or less, now I have double screens. So I basically, when you guys sit in I present one screen to you, but then on the other screen, I'll have half of the video, right? And then I'll have another, like if I'm referring to the textbook at the same time, I'll have the textbook now going half on the other screen. And when I screen capture it all, 2 screens at once.
Wow.
And then I bring it into my post-editing software, and then I copy that video 3 times. And then I'll crop each one of those into separate. So I'll crop one of them into the Revit. I'll crop the other one into the textbook, and I'll crop the other one with just me. And then I'll organize it into that. And then I turn that in. I think you guys saw it in the last video. I started doing that. And I figured out that that was a much better way to do that. Then that way you can kind of see everything. But it's definitely been a challenge. And I ran into, you guys already know, I ran into a lot of challenges when my desktop blew up last semester, and I ended up working on my laptop. It was very hard for me to work on my laptop and needing that kind of processing power to do use the editing software and everything. But, I got it up and running again, and it's humming away. So back to a little bit more productivity. But it's very difficult. It's been very, very difficult having 5 different classes, because as I said, all of doing that is just for one class. Then I got to do it 4 more times. because all of the classes are different, I can't do one for one and then use it for two or for three, right? So it has just been a big challenge of, time and everything, but, I'm not complaining. Love my job. Could be worse. I could be collecting unemployment or trying to collect unemployment, like a lot of people who are, having troubles with that right now. So no, I have no complaints. It's the challenges of the job. And it's all
We understand your pain because we do a lot of video and audio editing.
good. Maybe I'll hire you. You want to come work? I'm going to send you all my lectures, and then you guys can post-edit it however you want.
Mr. Fu, I'll edit your beard out.
You're going to have like
Yeah.
extra
Put a
mustache
filter on you.
And then additionally, you guys know this. So in the beginning, I was doing all of that, and then I was just posting the MP4s, and I was realizing some students were like, depending on what platform they're trying, and it's like now they got to download a video, and if they don't have enough connection speed, then it would take too long to. You guys know, right? The size of an MP4 for a 2-hour long. Sometimes my night classes is one time a week, right? So 3 hours, and it was like becoming a problem. So then I was like, you know what? I got to make this easier. So that's when I started. After I do all of that, process it through Camtasia, it creates I just do a basic MP4 1080 and creates that MP4, and then I upload it into YouTube on my channel. And then that way it's just, now students just have to link it. I mean, as long as you got internet connection, you guys can watch the videos now. And I found that was the better way to do it. But mainly that's been my goal, is trying to make it as easy as, it's not easy. You guys know I don't like to use the word easy, right? I tried to make it as the least amount of difficulty for students, right? Accessibility wise. Because if you guys can't access it, then it's just all for naught, right? But that's what I use. What do you guys use?
To record right now,
OBS.
I looked at that too.
And to edit, we use DaVinci Resolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's a lot of connectivity, right? Like it's like automatically, like it seamlessly transitions, right, or whatever you can. Mainly for web-based type of production, right? Isn't that what it's for? It's really good with that OBS.
Yeah, I like OBS because you can overlay a lot of things. Like you can have multiple inputs, so you can have your webcam, and then you can put that at the bottom, have your monitor, and you can basically, it records all of that at the same time. So it's good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the only reason why I'm able to do that, because it's a different perspective, is because it's straight up screen capture, right? So as long as I have all of those things open, then I can kind of accomplish the same thing, right? So it's like, so that's what I do now too. I have a document camera that I was using, but it just became kind of a pain to set up. So I started just using my phone. So I have, I downloaded DroidCam, and then I have this clamped over my side desk like this. And then I basically pull up this camera on the screen, and I'll paste it on the side too. And then that's what I started doing. So I'll just have everything pasted, right? I'll have my main screen so it's big enough for you guys to see, like the Revit. And then this other screen is going to have the textbook. It's going to have the document camera. It's going to have the other one. And then I just screen capture the whole thing. And then I just kind of crop each one out, and I have them. Then I organize it in Camtasia. I guess it's kind of the same, but I don't know. But that's how I end up doing it. And then Camtasia allows you to, like OBS, because I looked at OBS too, but we were already familiar with Camtasia because we've been using Snagit and things like that for years. Yeah, TechSmith products. But there's some pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's very similar to OBS, but I barely use half of the features that are in Camtasia. But you can over narrate, you can do all of that. And anyway, I might look into other things, but right now that I'm comfortable with Camtasia, it's like I can't like try to relearn something else right in the middle of a semester with 5 courses. But one hiccup, it just throws me off, because right now it's like, because I'm in the beginning, right? So it's like, this will be the end of 1 full year of courses, right? So now, right, after this, kind of like after the spring break, I actually have some content that I used before that I can use as a base point, right? I don't have to do everything from scratch. I can take like a video from, previous section and look, okay, what can I use some of this? I can, so that's what I'm going to end up doing this summer, is all of the videos that I created for the fall, this past fall. I'm going to look at it and see what I can update. And I look at, it's just like what I think we find on YouTube, right? Which is why a lot of those, whatever CAD tutorials that you guys do find, it's kind of like 2000 and, 2019, right? You see it on the screen, but they just kind of, they use the clip and then they narrate over and then they add in here and there, right? So that's the part that I think will help benefit us going forward. But up until we get to that point, everything is brand new, right? I have to create brand new content. So it's like I'm playing catch up all the time. And if I hit a hiccup, then I fall behind. It almost becomes like it's a 2-week delay. So there's just not enough hours in the day. I need you guys. Yeah, maybe I'll hire you guys. Student help, community service hours.
Well, Mr. Fo, thank you again for your time.
Who should be thanking who? I should thank you for ears. Thank you for your ears. Go and get Q-tips and stop the bleeding.
I mean, you shared really good information, regardless of if it was on topic or not. So,
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate you saying.
Do you have any final thoughts or announcements you want to share with students?
All mainly just what I tell you guys. We totally understand that there's a lot of external things that kind of become roadblocks for your guys' academic journey. But if you're in 2-year programs at Honolulu Community College, you just really, really need to try to stay focused and hang in there, because of the nature of how our program is set up. If you miss a course or you fail a course, you basically, it basically creates a 1-year delay in your academic journey. So you really need to kind of think about that. And 1 year is a long time to wait to start again. So that's all I have to say, is just make sure that if things happen, talk to someone. We have so much resources on campus. Usually, a lot of times students will wait until it's too late. And at that point, again, then for programs like ours, it becomes a 1-year detour, yeah, or a 1-year truck stop before you can continue on your journey. So that's all I have to say. Is just, and I think a lot of our instructors on campus are extremely approachable, whether they seem to appear to be or not. All of our instructors at Honolulu Community College really care about student success, in my opinion. I know for sure in AEC. So that's all I have to say. And hang in there.
Thank you again, Mr. Fo. Thank you again for joining us and taking time of your day to be a part of this podcast.
My pleasure. As always, anything for students, especially AEC students.
Thank you guys again for listening to the Kala podcast. Just a couple of reminders before we go. Whenever you guys come into campus, make sure to use the LumaSite app. You guys can go to the online version at uh.campus.lumasite.com or download the Google app or the Apple app. If you guys need to make an appointment with your counselors, make sure to use Star Balance. For more information on campus updates and available services, please visit honolulu.hawaii.edu/COVID-19 services.
And students, do you want to help make fun campus events, run campus media, or want to make a difference for Honolulu CC while getting paid? Consider becoming a student leader, just like all of us. You can email hgcsod@hawaii.edu on how to apply.
Remember, guys, submissions for Art and Soul, the deadline has passed, but Don't fret, you can still submit your artwork to be featured in the upcoming magazine. We accept late submissions, but act now because we're starting production on the magazine. Submit your artwork at tinyurl.com/HCC Art and Soul. And we look forward to seeing your amazing artwork.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram to be on the loop for more HonCC events at HonCC_SLD and at HCC Kala News. Visit thekala.net for more HonCC news as well. Thank you guys again for listening to the Kala Podcast. You guys can listen to more episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and Anchor. New episodes are up every Monday. Thank you guys again. And goodbye.
Bye-bye. Should be up
Okay.
within,
Spring break
Yeah.
Monday.
maybe.
So you guys are taking those lines from me, right? It's kind of like what I say when I say the lecture should be up.
By sometime.